It's great to finally meet you, Chad.
It's Chaz, but thank you, sir.
I've heard all about you. The feedback has been interesting.
Thank you. Some people say I'm a hero, but you know.
Look, our auditors flagged an issue with the key man risk and the tribal knowledge in your head.
You had me at key man. You're too kind.
Yeah, so anyway, they're concerned that if something were to happen to you, the entire operations would shut down.
Oh, don't worry. I'm perfectly healthy. I go to Mexico at least once a quarter to, stay healthy.
Right. So where are the backups of all these spreadsheets?
I have a solid backup plan so anyone can access the data whenever they need it. One copy on my desktop, one on my home PC, and another copy right here in my head. So we have 3 copies. We're in great shape.
Yeah, that's a real problem.
No, it's fine. I don't mind maintaining the redundancy. Someone has to protect the company data, right?
We're also concerned that the data isn't making its way to our ERP system or that new AI tool we're rolling out.
Oh, that's okay. The spreadsheets are a lot more reliable and flexible than those tools, so you don't need to worry.
Chaz, I'm going to be direct with you. The board wants this risk eliminated. We need everything documented, backed up, and migrated into the new ERP by the end of this quarter.
End of the quarter, huh?
Is that a problem?
No, I can do that. Quick question first. The freight surcharge calculation, the one that feeds your gross margin number, that's currently in tab 34. You want me to migrate that too?
Yes, all of it.
Okay, cool. And the vendor rebate accruals, the one that make the quarterly earnings tie out?
Those two.
And the revenue recognition bridge you presented to the board last month, the one that turned a miss into a beat, that lives on my home PC.
How much of our reporting runs directly through you?
Define how much.
You know what? Let's not rush this. These things take time, change management and all that.
Yeah, 3 to 5 years.
Sure.
Pleasure doing business, sir. And hey, don't stop believing.
So that is Spreadsheet Guy. He continues to dominate corporate America. I was going to say he continues to be a nuisance, but based on the feedback from the audience, I don't think he's as much of a nuisance as he is a reality. So love doing the Spreadsheet Guy series, mainly because it's so real. I think every client I've ever worked with had a Spreadsheet Guy or gal. And it's especially relevant to today's episode. You mentioned, or you noticed in that video, Spreadsheet Guy, one of Spreadsheet Guy's shortcomings, if you will, or one of the things that he's being pressured on is that he's got all this data and his spreadsheets in his head, but it's not making its way to the ERP and the AI systems that are being rolled out by corporate. So he's caught in the middle here trying to figure out, well, how do I take all this logic, all the stuff that I've been forced to do outside the system? How do I move it to the new system? And then, of course, he wins out in the end and buys himself an extra few years to figure out how to make that happen, largely because it's so complicated. And I think what this does is it opens up the web of complication that new technology exposes. Anytime you have a new technology like AI, like ERP, any sort of enterprise tech, you're forced or tasked with the issue or the problem of trying to figure out, how do I take all that customization that I've got in my legacy systems? How do I get all the spreadsheets, all the undocumented processes in people's heads? How do I get all of that into the new system? And that is a lot easier said than done. It's easy to look at Spreadsheet Guy and the people that are part of the legacy environment. It's easy to look at them as the problem. But one of the big things that I actually just recently posted a longer form YouTube video on is spreadsheets and spreadsheet guys of organizations are actually a symptom of a deeper problem, which is their enterprise technology sucks. Their systems can't handle what needs to happen in the business. So Spreadsheet Guy comes along, he fixes the problem, and he unknowingly becomes part of the problem that all the consultants and leadership is trying to fix and the software vendors are trying to fix. And sounds good in theory. Let's get rid of Spreadsheet Guy, even though we like the guy, he's funny and entertaining. Maybe we don't need him in the organization, and that is not realistic. And I would argue, and I would submit to you that Spreadsheet Guy and spreadsheets in general are going to become even more prevalent in the coming years, not because I'm advocating for spreadsheets, but because, per the premise of this episode, AI and ERP are headed in a direction that's not good. It's not sustainable, and there's a lot of turbulence in this transition to cloud ERP and AI solutions. And that's really what we want to focus our discussion here today on, episode 280 of Transformation Ground Control. We're going to talk about AI hype versus reality. We're going to talk about AI in the world of ERP. We're going to talk about what's really happening in the world of AI and ERP, some use cases and case studies of organizations that have tried but failed to implement AI. What are those lessons and what can we take away from that? We're going to talk about some of the data and what that's showing. I mentioned that already. We'll talk about how on-prem isn't dead. We'll talk about the limitations of cloud. We'll talk about hybrid options. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff here in episode of 280 of Transformation Ground Control. Welcome, and let's jump in.
Welcome to Transformation Ground Control. Ground Control. The podcast that covers everything related to digital transformation. Whether you're embarking on an ERP implementation, supply chain transformation, or any other business or digital transformation, this podcast is for you.
3, 2, 1.
Ground control to Major Tom.
Welcome to Transformation Ground Control, episode 280. This is the podcast, tech agnostic, covering everything related to strategy, people, process, technology, everything you need to know about digital transformation. No marketing spin, the reality that you may or may not want to hear. But if you're a leader, you absolutely have to hear this stuff that we cover every week. And in this episode 280, we're going to take a different route. Today's episode is a little different. No guest, just me, the audience, and a topic I think every executive listening to needs to hear, which is AI hype versus AI reality, especially in the world of ERP. Now, before we get started, I want to jump into a couple things that I'm going to dive into in this conversation here today. One is that MIT recently published research showing that 95% of AI pilots don't measure or don't deliver measurable ROI. PwC has a survey that followed up that MIT survey that said only 12.5% of CEOs delivered both cost savings and revenue growth. So AI pilots aren't producing results. Only 1 in 8 CEOs are getting both savings and growth out of their AI investment. And if this were any other technology, we'd be calling it a crisis. We'd be calling this a problem. But because it's AI, it's sexy, exciting, investor friendly. The industry is largely staying quiet, and we're in that same spot that we always seem to find ourselves in the technology space, where we think we finally found that technology that is the silver bullet. You know, back in the day, it was, the Y2K fix. That was going to be the silver bullet. The client server technologies of the early 2000s, the cloud systems of the 2010s. Now here we are into the 2020s saying, no, but for real, this time it's different. AI is going to be different. It's going to be easier to deploy. It's so much more flexible. It can do so much more. It's going to replace people's jobs. All the same garbage that we've been spouting and cycling through for 30 years now that I've been doing this. We're just rehashing it again, calling it something different and hoping for better results. And as you know, hope is not a strategy. But here we are. And I think the key here is to understand the realities of where we are in the AI journey that we're in. And keep in mind, we're really early in this phase. I mean, I think 5 or 10 years from now, we're going to look back at today and say, wow, we had no idea what we were doing back then, did we? And when I say we, I mean, even us as consultants, I think we're learning a lot as we go. Vendors are still selling this concept. Boards are still pushing for AI. Stock prices are still being rewarded for AI announcements. But meanwhile, in reality, real customers are burning money on AI initiatives that just aren't delivering. So that's why today I'm going to spend some time digging into the case studies that nobody wants to publicize: Ford, Starbucks, Volkswagen, Taco Bell, even McDonald's. And I'm going to talk about some of the lessons from these failures, these high profile failures. Big companies with big budgets, big resources, they still can't make their AI initiative succeed. But the good news is it's because they're doing it wrong. It's not because they don't have enough money or enough focus. It's because they're doing the wrong things. They're doing the same things they've been trying to do for 30 years, which is spotlighting and focusing on technology and completely ignoring people and processes and even strategy. So before we dive into all this, though, I want to get to a comment or a question on social media that I received that's very relevant to today's episode. And the comment or question is this: Eric, you're being too negative on AI. Every business that doesn't adopt AI now will be out of business in 5 years. I am calling complete BS on that. AI or lack thereof will not put you out of business. In fact, I would argue that today you are more likely to go out of business by deploying a big, expensive, bloated, complicated, unworkable AI tool, especially if you haven't cleaned up your data and you haven't trained your people and you haven't built your processes to support AI, if you haven't built the data governance, if you haven't done all these things, you are more likely to go out of business by deploying bad technology, whether it's AI or ERP or anything else, by the way. So my response to this is I'm not anti-AI. I'm just anti-stupid. Let's stop being stupid about how we spend money. I love AI. I use it all the time. Literally, I'd say, gosh, I can't even count. I'd say 15 to 20 times a day minimum. I'm using AI for everything from, just understanding the status of different clients, how meetings are going with our clients on a day-to-day basis, which potential clients I should be reaching out to that look like they're the most interested in our services, whatever it is, even creating marketing content, my videos, my podcast, this podcast script. I'm reading a script that was created with AI using my thoughts, but it's organizing my thoughts in a way that allows me to prep for this podcast so much faster. So I use it all the time. I believe in AI. We use AI as an organization too, not just in creating content, but we use AI with every client engagement we have, which opens up a Pandora's box of information and knowledge and understanding that we just never had before. Hundreds of clients now have helped us train this model to where now we can deliver better, more effective and faster results to our clients. So I totally believe in AI, and that Mission Control AI tool is something that we bring to the table. And I'd love to show you Mission Control AI at some point. So reach out to me, DM me if you want to learn more about it, especially if you want to see how it could help with your digital transformation. It's really cool. It has all of our methodologies built into it. It has all of our client experience, all 400 plus clients, plus another 1,000 companies that I've talked to, that our team has talked to over the years, maybe not as paying clients, but just navigating their transformations and helping them on an informal basis. So a lot of really powerful stuff there with Mission Control AI. If you want to learn more about it, reach out. But that's a long way of saying I believe in AI, but I do want to say something that the marketing crowd in the world of technology and AI doesn't want to say, which is just as many companies will be out of business in 5 years for overinvesting recklessly in AI and other technologies as they are for ignoring it. So for every person that's out there saying you'll be out of business if you don't do this, I will counter with saying, yeah, you could also be out of business for doing it now and being stupid about it, or not being smart about how you invest it, or not being deliberate and focused and just smart about how you deploy the technology. So the companies that win aren't going to be the loudest adopters. They're going to be the smartest ones, the one who tied AI to specific business problems and didn't fall for the FOMO, didn't fall for the hype, didn't blindly follow their system integrator or their vendor. So that's all important stuff. So we're going to cover today, I'm going to cover the trough of illusionment. I'm going to talk about real case studies of AI failures from Ford to Starbucks to Volkswagen, why most projects are failing, what AI done right actually looks like, and how to navigate the dysfunction between vendors, consultants, and customers, which is exactly what my new book, Welcome to the Machine, is about. And if you haven't checked that out, go to Amazon. It ships everywhere in the world, either physically, you can get it hardcover, paperback, you can get it electronically. Via Kindle. You can also get the audiobook. So go to Amazon.com and you can have it shipped to you, access it anywhere in the world. And in that book, I talk about the dysfunction between vendors, consultants, and their customers, and how each of those three parties do something that creates dysfunction, or it creates a machine of failure. And it's really playing out right now in the world of AI. I talk a lot in the book about AI and the movement we're seeing right now, and how we're about to repeat the same exact pattern that we've repeated for years and decades now, but we somehow think it's going to be different this time because it's AI. It's cooler. It's way better than ERP. It's way better than cloud. It's way better than client server. It's way better than mainframe solutions that at the time were cutting edge. This is different. And, that's the mentality. I'm being a bit facetious when I say that. It's not different. The technology is different, but we need to be a lot better and smarter about how we deploy technology. And so those are the lessons I want to leave you with here today. And another thing I want to mention too is that we have an upcoming event. It's called Digital Stratosphere. It's an event in September. It's a event you can join in person or virtually. So anywhere in the world you are, you can join it virtually. If you can't be at all the live sessions, you also get recordings to it. If you join in person, you'll also get the recordings to any sessions you might miss. But it's September 9th through 11th, I believe it is. Go to stratosphere2026.com and you can learn more about the agenda, the speaker lineup as it's forming here. We have the speaker lineup confirmed. The agenda, the exact agenda should be out anytime now. But go to Stratosphere 2026. You can learn more about it. Use the discount code EARLYBIRD and you'll get 20% off. And I'd love to see you there. I'll be one of the keynote speakers. And it is September 9th through 11th. I just double checked my notes. September 9th through 11th, Denver, Colorado. If you haven't been to Denver, it's a great place. I'm biased about that. If I do have a bias, It's two things. One is I love Denver, Colorado, and I'm also biased for what customer needs are in this industry. So guilty as charged on those two biases. But beyond that, you're not going to find a lot of bias from me. But having said all that, stratosphere2026.com. Use the promo code EARLYBIRD for 20% off. And let's jump into it here after break. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll jump into the discussion talking about AI, case studies, AI hype, AI reality, how it all integrates with ERP. We'll take audience questions. It's going to be a great conversation. Stick around. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control. If you're about to embark on the jungle of digital transformation, check out my new book, Welcome to the Jungle. It's a book that just came out in late 2025. It's my second book, and it's a book that focuses on digital transformation failure case studies and talks about the lessons and takeaways from that. It's 300 pages packed of all the lessons and things that I've learned from having been an expert witness in lawsuits related to digital transformations, and also with our team helping clients recover some of their failed projects. I've included as many lessons I could possibly fit into one book here. You can read this book. You can order it anywhere in the world in hard copy format, which is this format here. You can get it in paperback. You can also get it electronically as well. Scan the QR code right here or go to the links below for your copy. Hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think.
Are you looking for ways to promote your product or service to enterprise technology decision makers and influencers throughout the world, like the ones who listen to this podcast? Major Tom Productions creates media, events, and influencer marketing for B2B technology providers. Our productions are exciting, educational, disruptive, and effective. Most importantly, they create results. Our content is unlike any other in this industry, engaging, influential, and trusted by technology buyers and influencers throughout the world. Each month, our productions reach hundreds of thousands of targeted buyers and decision makers who trust and engage with our honest and tech-agnostic content. With long-tail viral results and engagement with our content, Major Tom Productions provides a way to reach your target market and create awareness, calls to action, and a connection with potential customers. So collaborate with us today. Learn how we can feature your product or service on podcasts such as Transformation Ground Control, Journey to S/4HANA, and Journey to Dynamics 365. We can also feature your brand on our YouTube channel called Digital Transformation with Eric Kimberling, which boasts over 100,000 subscribers and over 2 million video views per year. You can also participate in our in-person events, including our Digital Stratosphere Conference. Contact us today to learn more. We can tailor a marketing campaign that works for you. We look forward to helping more people learn more about and become engaged with your brand.
Before we jump into today's conversation, I wanted to show you this really funny post. I saw this right before we went live with this podcast. And this is a post on LinkedIn. I actually don't follow this person. I sent him a request right after I saw this because I really liked it. And I also liked the organization he works for, which is called the Orwellian Resurrection Society, which I'm intrigued by this. I love George Orwell. My favorite book, by the way, is 1984. Sort of a two-way tie for my favorite book of all time. 1984 or Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. Those are my two favorite books. But I love 1984. I love George Orwell. And I love this graphic here that Chris Snyder on LinkedIn post. And if you're listening to the audio only version, it's a cartoon of a guy in front of a washing machine. And he's holding on one hand, he's trying to get the washing machine to work. And his other hand, he's got a owner's manual that says the future of laundry. And it says smart, connected, intelligent. And then the bubble of what he's saying, the dialogue bubble says, I don't need my washing machine to connect to Wi-Fi, send me notifications, or require a software update. Just give me a knob that says start and let me wash my clothes. And I love this cartoon because it to me, it amplifies, really highlights some of the problems in this industry. We get so focused on all the cool stuff. Like think about that. Think about a washing machine that can give you alerts and it's Wi-Fi enabled. Maybe it's even got AI or something. Do you really care? Does it really matter? are you really solving any problem with that? Or are you just building AI or building technology just to build technology? And I think in this industry, that's so common. Like we put out all this crap, this technology crap that doesn't necessarily work for customers. It's overkill. It's too complicated. It's not solving any problems. It's costing a lot of money. It's creating more complexity and risk than it's worth. Yet we're out there peddling that as best practice, or this is the, if you don't get this new washing machine, your clothes are going to be dirty, you're going to smell, and no one's going to like you. We're using all this social pressure that doesn't exist. We're creating or manufacturing this urgency that doesn't really exist. So thank you to Tim for sharing that. Hopefully he doesn't mind me sharing his content here to a big audience, although that post seemed to have gone viral. And what I really like about it too, if you didn't catch it, in his bio, he's got a little banner behind his picture that says "Make Orwell Fiction Again." So, I'm sure there might be some political undertones there too. But I also feel like in this industry, in technology, it feels very Orwellian-esque. Like you need to go to the cloud now. You need to move to AI now. If you don't, you're gonna be left behind. You need us to control your data. Here's where it gets really Orwellian. As you look at what SAP is doing, I mean, I feel like every executive at SAP must have read 1984 and thought it was like a blueprint for how to run the world, because they're coming out with these policies about, API restrictions and locking out third parties from accessing their system, all in the name of security, which is complete garbage. And, it's not just SAP. I pick on them a lot because they're the big dinosaur, the big 800-pound gorilla. I guess I was a Freudian slip when I said dinosaur, but 800-pound gorilla, let's call it. They're the big 800-pound gorilla in the industry. So to me, they exemplify everything that happens in this industry. And there's a lot of pretty Orwellian stuff happening now. But that's neither here nor there. That's not the purpose of this discussion, although maybe it'd be a good podcast discussion or topic for a future discussion. But what I want to do here now is really turn to the audience and really get into some of these case studies regarding AI and ERP, the hype versus reality. AI, it's we're all talking about it. There's a lot of hype around it. We don't know where the world of AI is going to be in a year or 2 years from now. If you look back 2 or 3 years, things have changed pretty dramatically or pretty drastically since the whole AI movement started, which really kicked into high gear when ChatGPT caught the consumer world by storm, and people at an individual level started using ChatGPT in mass. And now, of course, you've got Google Gemini and Grok and Anthropic / Claude. You've got all kinds of different options now in the world of AI. And then, of course, you've got the traditional enterprise tech vendors like SAP and Oracle and Microsoft, Epicor, Infor, Workday, Salesforce. They're all investing heavily in AI. It's almost like a nuclear arms race here of who's gonna be the center of the universe in the world of AI. And I think there's a lot that'll shake out here in the coming years. But really what I want to talk about is not so much specific AI vendors or specific vendors and how they're handling AI, but more in general, how are consumers or how are end customers using AI today, and what are some of the challenges they're facing, and some of the lessons that we can take away from them. So one thing I'd like to start with is how AI is so cool. I mean, on one hand, it's a very cool product. It's a cool tool set. I'm obsessed with it, borderline obsessed with it. I use it all the time. For everything from preparing for podcasts like this to creating marketing content to analyzing and understanding different clients, understanding what our teams are working on. I just have more knowledge and access to more information than I've ever had. And I think a lot of you probably have some of that experience too. And I'd love to hear your thoughts here in the comments. Just drop in the chat. What has your experience with AI been? What are your thoughts on AI? Are you using it regularly? Is it something you're excited about? Are you tired of hearing about it? Love to hear, just get a pulse check from you all, from the audience here, on what your thoughts are regarding AI and where it stands here today in mid 2026 as we're having this conversation. But when we look at AI, one thing that I see is that the trough of disillusionment is here. So right now, if you look at surveys, they show that a vast majority of corporate AI initiatives stall or fail to produce business value. And in particular, MIT had a study, and other research confirms this too, but the study from MIT shows that roughly 95% of AI pilots do not measurable ROI. And I think we're in a dangerous spot right now in the enterprise tech space where when I say we, I mean everyone from the technologists and the vendors to the end customers here. But I think a lot of the community here thinks and has a false perception that AI is different. Things will be different this time with AI. All the problems we've had with enterprise tech
failures, including massive ERP failures of decades past. There's a perception that, well, maybe AI will change that. Now with AI, things are easier, things are faster, things are more efficient. We have access to siloed data in ways we didn't have before. And some of that is true. There's some truth to that, but it's just like, it reminds me of the cloud movement. As companies started moving to the cloud, a lot of organizations started thinking, oh, cloud's going to be a lot easier because now I don't have to deal with all the internal infrastructure and someone else is going to manage this all for me. It's just a lift and shift from on-prem to the cloud. And I think we have learned over the last 10 years or so that that is absolutely not true. If anything, cloud migrations are even more difficult because you have less flexibility with a lot of cloud systems and solutions than you did with on-prem. And that creates a whole host of other problems. So on one hand, you're solving one technical issue in the case of the cloud, but you're just creating other risks you've got to manage. So AI is a lot like that. It reminds me of the hype around the cloud and how the cloud is just going to solve all of our problems. And I would argue the cloud has actually made things a lot worse and a lot more challenging for end customers. It's made things a lot better for software vendors. They are a lot more profitable now. Investors are loving it. They're eating it up. They're driving up stock prices. Although there are cracks in that foundation that, is outside the scope of this podcast. But there's other podcasts you can listen to where they talk about financial advice and investments and things like that. There are cracks in the foundation of the economics of AI. And a lot of companies, by the way, including Microsoft and Oracle, have been called out lately for overstating some of the revenue that they're generating from AI and cloud, and understating the massive costs that go along with building infrastructures that can support cloud and AI solutions. So that's a whole nother topic for another time. But point being that this is a lot like what we've seen repeatedly over and over again over the last 30 years that I've been in this industry, which is new technology comes along. We think it's going to solve all our problems. And we think that this time it'll be different because the technology is so much better. But as this MIT study shows, 95% of AI pilots do not deliver measurable ROI. And that should be alarming to everyone watching here.
So I want to stop for a minute and talk about this thread a little bit more. The thread or the misconception that AI is different this time. Technology is different this time. Digital transformation will be different this time because it involves AI. It involves cloud systems. The ERP systems are more modern now, and it's different. I've been hearing this for so long. It drives me crazy. It's the same thing over and over. It's like, oh, no. I know we failed in the past and the technology sucks and our implementation sucked, but this time, for real, it's different. I know I've said that 3 or 5 times over the last 20 years, but now for real, it's true. It gets old, but I've been in this industry for almost 30 years, so maybe I'm a bit jaded. And I've heard this exact phrase with about every major technology wave we've seen. We saw it with Y2K, the .com era, cloud migration boom, mobile, big data, blockchain. Remember blockchain? Remember the metaverse? I mean, blockchain and the metaverse were going to be the next big thing. And it's sort of, both of those things have fallen out of favor pretty quick. I mean, there's a pretty fast boom and bust for both of those. And now it's AI. I don't think AI is going to have a bust anytime soon. I do think some companies will fail. Some AI vendors are going to fail. The incumbents or the leaders are going to shake up, and it's, some are going to fall by the wayside, and then some will emerge as the victors or the dominant players. But I don't think the AI category is going to die off like blockchain and other areas have like the metaverse have come and gone. But every single time we see one of these cycles, one of these hype cycles, the industry tells us this time it's different. The technology is so much better. The transformation will happen faster. User adoption is going to be easier. Failure rates are going to go down. The ROI is going to be easier to capture. If anything, I think things are getting worse. And in fact, the data points to it. If you look at some of the data, not only the data that we're talking about here in this episode, but there was recently a study from McKinsey that I think it was like 88% or more of companies are not getting any value from their AI initiatives and or are failing. So the failure rates are, I would argue, going to creep up. I don't think they're definitely not going to get better. Not because AI has an inherent flaw or problem, but because it exposes the problems, the imperfections, and the issues that companies have had for years and have not fixed. Things like data, lack of focus on change management, lack of documentation, lack of standard processes. All that stuff is just going to get exposed faster with AI, and it's going to cause failure faster. In fact, I would think that it's going to be harder to hide those failures and mask those failure points with AI than you could with ERP and other types of technologies. And the other thing, this is an even bigger thing. The other reason why I think AI failures are actually going to be higher in the coming years is because the chasm between where organizations are today and where technology is taking us, that chasm is growing. So think of it as like a big risk. It's a chasm you've got to cross. It's a treacherous journey. And now that journey is even bigger. It's a wider gap between where we are today and what we're trying to get to with an AI driven world. So as that chasm expands, the risk gets higher, failure points get higher, and the consequences of not doing it right are even greater. So all those things lead me to believe that AI failures and even ERP failures rates are going to continue to increase. They are not going to get better as long as we keep doing things the same way. Now, if in the next, let's say overnight tomorrow, everyone wakes up and gets a head on their shoulders and decides that we need to stop trying to implement technology like it's 1999, then sure, maybe I hope I'm wrong. That would prove me completely wrong, but I'm not seeing that yet. I'm not seeing companies get smarter about how they deploy technology. And I'm certainly not seeing vendors and consultants get smarter about it. They are pushing the same narrative. They're pushing these projects like it's 1999 and we're in 2026. It's time to get with the changes. For as much as technology is advanced, our way of implementing is severely outdated. It's super old school. It's super ineffective. I don't know why it hasn't changed. It's very frustrating to watch. But I think over time, I do see companies starting to catch on. And I think part of it, if I'm being honest and also maybe a slightly biased way, I do think the movement of more independent tech agnostic consultants, not just my company, but since starting Third Stage, there have been a proliferation of independent consulting companies. So I think that's a good thing. I like seeing more independent consultants, even though a lot of them are just one or two man shops or whatever, that's fine. It's creating an awareness and an objectivity that didn't exist in this industry 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. So I think the tides are shifting. It's just going to take time to change this machine, if you will, this machine that this industry has built that's very dysfunctional. But I think over time, with more independent, objective voices, you'll start to see that change. And as leaders get smarter about how to deploy these technologies, that will change. So the reasons these projects fail are still the same. The companies that succeed and the things they do are still the same. They do it with clear strategy. They've got strong leadership, clean data, smart governance, disciplined execution. All that stuff will survive all the technological changes in the world. The technology will come and go, but those fundamentals need to be in place. And if you don't have those fundamentals in place, forget about the technology. It doesn't matter how cool it is, what it can or can't do in theory. It's not going to happen in reality if you don't get those things right. So we talk about the studies. Let me reiterate these points. MIT gave us the data about AI. 95% of pilots don't measure deliverable ROI. PwC said 12.5% of CEOs say that AI delivered cost savings revenue growth. So in other words, 87.5% of companies say they aren't getting cost savings revenue growth. So AI is genuinely powerful, but it doesn't exempt you from the fundamentals. If you don't have your data house in order, AI will make your data problems louder. If you don't have governance, AI will make your governance problems faster. And if you don't have change management, AI will make your change management problems bigger. So the technology is new, the failure modes are old, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise. In addition to the MIT study, you also have a PwC survey that found that only 12.5% of CEOs reported AI delivered both cost savings and revenue growth. So you have to ask yourself, well, if you're not getting cost savings and or revenue growth, then why are you implementing AI? What's the point? You can't say it's just strategic. It's it's modernizing. It's reducing technical debt. Those are fuzzy, intangible, utopia, rainbows and unicorns sorts of business benefits that can't be justified, in my opinion. And certainly the PwC data shows that and backs that only 12.5% of CEOs reported that AI delivered both cost savings and revenue growth. So the takeaway here is that the failure is almost never the algorithm or the technology. AI has the possibility, the capabilities of completely transforming the way we do business, the way we run our businesses, the way we make decisions, the way we analyze and understand our businesses. I certainly see it firsthand. We use AI very heavily in our company. It's made us a lot more efficient and effective in the way we deliver to our clients, but it doesn't come without hiccups and major roadblocks. I know for our organization, we're consultants, right? We do a lot of change management stuff. We're always advising clients on how to use better technology and how to manage change and navigate the human side of change. We struggled a lot with, as a company, to deploy AI and to embed AI within our delivery. And it just goes to show that even a company like us, where that's what we do for a living, that's what we do every day, yet we ourselves struggled with adopting AI. It took us a solid year to get to where we actually had a lot of momentum and actually started to see the business value. And now we finally have consultants where our team is fully on board. And we're not a huge company. We have less than 100 consultants worldwide. But imagine if we had 1,000 or 10,000 or 100,000 employees, the difficulty gets exponentially worse. So that's just a personal case study from our team here at Third Stage. But the key here is that the challenges that we're experiencing right now with AI is almost never the technology itself. Although I will say AI is a bit different than cloud ERP or ERP systems of years past, because ERP systems at least have been around for a long time and they're fairly or relatively well developed and established, whereas AI tools are relatively new and relatively immature. So that's some of the challenges here. So just some comments here from the audience. I'll go to all the platforms here and circle around and see what people are commenting in the chat here. Natasha on LinkedIn says, I use it regularly as a thinking partner and as a coding assistant. I like the term thinking partner. I do the same thing. I bounce ideas around. I get ideas from it. I take an initial idea from AI. I'll sort of make it my own. And I use it all the time now for like video, like when I create YouTube videos, when I create shorts, when I need to write a script for a more planned out or a more scripted video that I do. I'll use AI to help me. I'll just give it the general ideas of what I want to cover, and then AI will kind of refine it for me. And so I'm with you on that. I like that thinking partner concept. That's the same way I use it too. Megan on LinkedIn says, I use it a lot for work as well as a lot of recipe conversations and adaptations to adjust for being in Denver and for finding discount codes when I online shop. I never thought to use it for discount codes. That's a great idea. I don't think I should tell my wife about that. Maybe I should. I don't know. Let me think about that. That could be a good thing or a bad thing. Let me know in the comments. Should I tell my wife or not that she could be using AI for discount codes? On one hand, it saves us money, but according to her math, she'll be saving us money if she buys more. So anyway, topic for another day. But discount codes I hadn't thought of, but the recipe conversions and adaptations. I am not a cook, but I love to grill. And so I've been using a ton lately for just how to grill different things. And so it's been kind of cool to learn how to do things that I probably wouldn't have done on my own. Because for me, it's a lot easier just to go ask AI than to watch a YouTube video or, to watch like a 5 or 10 minute video when I could just ask AI. So for cooking, that's a good use case as well. Here's a comment from YouTube from Thomas Kimball on YouTube. Thomas says ERP failures were implementation failures. The software generally worked fine. The AI failures we are seeing now is the technology failing, not the implementation. Yeah, I'd say I agree and disagree at the same time. I think there's a subset of what you're saying that's right. I think there's a partial immaturity to AI tools that is causing failure. But I think it's more when I think of technology failing in the world of AI, I think more of like the AI tool can't access other technologies that it needs access to, and more importantly, it can't access data it needs, or the data isn't clean. So I suppose if you consider that a technical failure, then I'd say yes, that's true. But I'd say that's still only a subset of what the bigger challenges are that companies are facing. A lot of them are facing challenges related to the human side of things as well. But I'd be curious to hear from the audience. Do you think this is true? Do you think it's a technology implementation? Or do you think it's operations? Is it organizational? Is it data related? I'd love to hear your feedback on this. Let's see. Bernie on TikTok says, love your YouTube videos. Helped out a lot when I got into enterprise sales a few years ago. I get that a lot. I get a lot of comments from enterprise technology sales people that said my videos helped. And I appreciate that. And I find that fulfilling, as long as you're not using it to become part of the machine to do all the weird tactics that sales reps sometimes do. No offense to all the salespeople here, but sometimes this industry is not the most up and up in the way they sell software. So hopefully my videos can help you at least understand the consumer or the customer perspective. Katie on TikTok says, rush to profit, less thought about compliance and governance. Yeah, rush to profit, less thought about compliance and governance as it relates to AI implementations. I think that's probably true. A lot of companies, a lot of investors are pushing hard to embed AI in their organizations, and they're not thinking about the actual implications and what the risks are and whatnot. So good point there. Thanks for that comment on TikTok, Katie. So thanks for everyone commenting here. I appreciate it. There's a lot of good stuff, a lot of good comments coming in here.
Here's another comment here on LinkedIn from Christopher. Christopher says, we keep building on an incomplete foundation. The enterprise software stack literally can't support automation reliably without human intervention and support, which is exactly what we're asking for with autonomous AI. We need a new foundation. This is an interesting point. I think there's a lot of truth here, a lot of merit to what Christopher is saying, in that in years past, we would advise clients on the same things like, hey, clean up your data. If you want to get all this cool dashboard and predictive analytics and analytical capabilities that ERP systems can provide, then you should probably clean up your data. Well, here we are decades later, still saying the same things to clients, like you should probably clean up your data. And now it's even more magnified or more true with AI tools, because AI further exposes and more quickly exposes problems you might have with your AI tool set. So those are all things to keep in mind as well. Good point. Old Bear on TikTok says AI is just intelligent algorithmic intelligence, not true AI. Artificial intelligence, in all caps, intelligence will be next. And then Old Bear follows up with, it's a great tool, but tool set, not the solution. So great points, Old Bear. Thank you for that. I appreciate your feedback here. Hello, Alina on LinkedIn. Thanks for being here today. Thanks for following. I think you follow me on all the platforms. I see you pop up on multiple channels. So thank you for following me here. Third Stage Consulting says, great statement, start of a great conversation. Does anyone else have thoughts on this? I second that question. Does anyone else have thoughts on their use of AI? And then here's a comment, or a question, I should say, from AI Profits on YouTube. Says, any suggestion on very minimal level of AI integration for manufacturing industry in India? Yeah, if you don't have AI available through your ERP provider or solution right now, you can certainly use the off-the-shelf software like ChatGPT and Claude and Gemini and other AI tools that are out there. But if you want more of an enterprise grade sort of solution that is more built for enterprise technology integration, then you might consider, in manufacturing especially, you might consider an AI tool like QAD, for example. QAD has something called Champion. That's a AI tool that can interface with multiple AI or multiple ERP systems. And a lot of people think of QAD as an ERP vendor, but they also have a manufacturing AI solution, which is pretty cool what they're doing now. So if you haven't, you might check them out. They're doing some pretty cool stuff in the manufacturing AI space. So that'd be my response there. Olu on LinkedIn says, organizations are overstating adoption success and return on AI investments, similar to what happened during the dot-com era. Yet the real results remain the same. People and businesses have to be honest about their capabilities and what they truly need. And then it goes on to say, a bit more transparency on governance will go a long way. I think this is really good, a good point. And I appreciate that you brought in and compared this to the dot-com era, because it feels a lot like the dot-com era right now. Not only in terms of the bubble that's building, the bubbles that are being built in the AI world. You look at, the stock prices and the valuations of some of these AI firms. It's not going to last, and I'm not trying to be a downer or a buzzkill here, but it just won't. All these companies that are seeing massive valuations because of their AI, and they're making just massive infrastructure investments to be able to support these massive data centers to support AI. It won't last, and there's going to have to be a shakeout. I mean, there's just no way all of these AI providers are going to be profitable long term. So you'll see some fail, some will succeed. It is a lot like the dot-com era. Investors are a little blinded to the sexiness and the appeal of AI, but I don't think the AI providers, for the most part, have provided a truly profitable model yet. And I'll be curious to see which ones succeed and which ones don't, because I think the landscape of AI may look a lot different in, call it 2 to 3 years, than it does right now, which is the hard part of navigating this right now too. If you're thinking about ways to, what type of AI tool should you be investing in, it's hard to navigate it because so many of these AI providers are new, and will they be around in 2, 3, 5, 10 years? It's a big unknown question here. So great questions. Keep them coming. I'm going to come back to the questions here in a moment, but what I want to get to here next is kind of building on the point I was talking about earlier with those studies that show that most organizations are not getting the business value they expect out of AI.
and they're not, in some cases, they're not getting any business value, any sort of measurable business value. But let's talk about why is that? Why is AI in ERP environments under delivering? Well, first of all, there's the sizzle versus steak. Vendors sell the buzzwords and the glossy demos, but the real functionality oftentimes doesn't match. It's really hard too as a consultant, where we're advising clients every day on how to navigate their technology decisions. And some of these are the biggest capital investments they'll ever make. At the very least, it's the biggest capital investment they've made in the last 5, 10, 15 years. And so it's a big deal. These are big long-term investments that these companies are making, and they have to sift through or navigate the difference between what they're seeing in a demo and understand what's the reality of what's actually deliverable, what's actually working, on the front lines in reality with AI tools. And those are two different things. And we struggle with that too, because a lot of times vendors will show you stuff that could be, it's almost like a future state of what might be. But then you dig in and say, okay, well, show me some examples from customers that are actually using this. And the data points are very limited as far as the use cases, the actual use cases. Now we're starting to see more of that. It's certainly better now than it was a year ago, a year or 2 years ago, especially. It was like, okay, this stuff looks really cool, but you can't name a single company out there that's using these capabilities. But now you at least have some examples, some use cases, some lessons learned, but it's still really early. I'd still say people that are rolling out AI at scale, for the most part, are on the bleeding edge. There's so many companies that are still trying to dip their toe in the water. But the challenge here is that AI inherits your data problems. So when you've got dirty data, duplicates, missing data owners, undocumented logic, you don't have data governance processes in place, all that, call it technical and data maturity that you need to really support a robust and scalable AI environment. Most organizations are missing that, and they're jumping in because a lot of times the investors, the board, the management team, the executive team is pushing the organization to roll out AI. Everyone's doing AI, so we better do it. It's sort of like, a FOMO sort of thing where we don't want to miss out. We got to get ahead of our competition. And you see a lot of the sales messaging on LinkedIn and other places where it's like, if you're not thinking about AI now, you're falling behind and you'll be out of business in 3 years. I see people quote these studies that say people that don't adopt AI now will be out of business. X% will be out of business in 5 years. That's a load of garbage. I would argue the opposite, which is a lot of companies that invest too much in AI right now will be out of business because they invested too much in AI and didn't invest in other things that could deliver actual business value to their companies. But of course, software vendors don't want to hear that. The sales reps in the audience may not want to hear that as well, but it is the truth. There are just as many, if not more, companies that are barreling full speed ahead towards these big, massive investments that are going to be complete money pits and a waste of shareholder value, a waste of business value. And you're just as likely to put yourself in a bind because you invested recklessly in AI, as opposed to invest in something else that might deliver more value. And I don't mean just other technology initiatives, whether it's cleaning up your data or just getting a basic functioning ERP system, for example. We have so many clients that have a broken ERP system that they've been struggling with for years, and now they want to layer on AI on top of that without fixing that broken foundation. And so I think that's the challenge or the risk that organizations need to think about. And a lot of executives are pursuing technology for technology's sake. So adopting AI to keep up rather than to solve a defined business problem. And we are starting to see more companies that are saying, hey, let's look at ways that we can take this one little problem and use AI to solve this very specific use case. That's different than saying, let's just roll out AI across the entire enterprise. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And then there's the last mile problems. Pilots succeed in clean, curated, low variance conditions, and then they degrade or fail at scale when the real world variance explodes. So it's a lot like ERP testing and deployment, but even more so with AI, because AI is in some ways, it's so flexible, but it magnifies the problems when you have variations in your processes or you've got poor data, people aren't using the system correctly, et cetera. So getting back to TikTok here, here's working kind of backwards here on TikTok. The only one who will be out of business is this guy to AI who can give better strategic guidance. That could be, I'll admit, who knows, maybe I'll be out of business because AI could give strategic guidance.
If I go out of business, if the consulting industry becomes obsolete and what we do becomes obsolete, then we won't be alone. There'll certainly be others, including some of the organizations that are now trying to invest too much in AI. AI has been trained on thousands of consultants and experts on questions and strategy. That is true. And that's what we're using with our AI tool. And we're offering our AI capabilities to others that may or may not want to use consultants. And it is a good point. We're preparing for the possibility that consulting goes away. I don't think it'll be in the next 2 or 3 years, but it could be in 10 years. And so that's why we productize a lot of what we do and continue to do that. Here's a question from Matthew on TikTok. Hi, Eric, what industries are investing in ERP and SAP transformation more than others? It's a good question. I'd say probably manufacturing. That's where we see a majority of SAP and ERP implementations. There's just been so many years of technical debt and technical legacy technology buildup and outdatedness that has built up in the manufacturing world. And manufacturers are just a lot more complex than the average organization, I would say, in other industries. Here's a question from Whale on TikTok. Quick question. We're having SAP ECC and we beat to upgrade. We are using very limited modules, I don't know if that means, and we need to upgrade. We are using very limited modules. If you're using very limited modules, I would first, even if you're on ECC, I would first get more adoption of what you've got. I know SAP is pushing to get you to S/4HANA by 2030 or whatever it is. But it's your business. And if you've already got an asset like ECC and you're not optimizing, you're not getting the full business value out of it, you've already paid for it. I would say go ahead and get the business value out of it, optimize it, get kind of a refinement of how you're using ECC. And then not only do you get more business value and you kick that big, massive investment down the road, which I think could be a good thing for a lot of companies. If you don't need to spend $10 million today and you could wait 3 years, then wait 3 years, spend the $10 million later. That's the way I look at it. But I know SAP sales reps will completely disagree with me and tell me that is absolutely garbage. And I don't want to, if you're an SAP sales rep, feel free to chime in the chat here, but I'll speak on what I think an SAP sales rep would say, which is that's technical debt. You're just delaying the inevitable. I would say, look at it objectively from a business perspective. And just like you would make any sort of investment decision, there's a million ways you could be spending money right now. If you have other priorities, you already have ECC and you could get more value out of it, but you could be spending that money somewhere else, either with, investing in more in ECC or investing more in getting value out of it, or maybe there's complementary technologies you can invest in, then go ahead and do that. And if you can wait 3 or 5 years to make that big capital investment and take on that massive amount of risk to upgrade to S/4HANA, then I would say, then do it if that's something that makes sense. Old Bear says, true, even worse. I have had an interesting chat with an inventor, and he states tech is emerging, which can make AI 100 to 500 times more efficient than it is right now. So that's really interesting. I'd love to know about what that tech is. Is it AI, or is it like a variation or an evolution of AI, or is it something different? I'd love to hear more about that because I'm not familiar with what you're referring to. Okay, there's a comment here from Gangle Recruitment on TikTok. Says you can check ganglerecruitment.info and you will see that you can see that AI is mean for the world. I'm not sure what that means, but Temori on TikTok says, hey, can I get some advice? Of course, ask me a question or DM me if you want advice offline. Comment from Matthew on TikTok. I hear more about projects going wrong than going right with ECC to S4. What is your take on why? Great question. And honestly, the answer to that doesn't have anything to do with AI. I would say it's more to do with the fundamentals of implementations. Failure rates for all ERP, not just SAP, have been 80% or higher for, according to most studies that you look at over the last 10, 20, 30 years. It hasn't budged a bit. If anything, it's gotten worse. You look at these AI studies that PwC and MIT have, and they are living proof that technology implementation failures are only increasing. But when you look at going from ECC to S/4HANA in the world of SAP, the reason those projects are failing are there's a number of reasons why they're failing. But the biggest one that I can point to, if I had to pick one thing, it's because
customers, the end companies are going from a highly customized, highly flexible version of ECC that they're fairly happy with. I don't know many people that aren't happy with ECC as a product. I'd say generally speaking, people like ECC. They it's got its deficiencies, its complexities, its nuances and quirks, of course. But overall, for a big, massive multinational company or any sort of company with scale, companies tend to like ECC. And I'm one of them. I used to be certified in SAP. I helped configure and implement SAP back earlier in my career, so I understand SAP really well. And what customers like about ECC, they don't like about S/4HANA, in that S/4HANA, especially if you're going to private cloud, and especially if you're going to public cloud, this is even more true. You just have less flexibility than you had with your on-prem ECC. Now, if you're fortunate enough to be one of the ones that SAP will let, and I use the word sort of tongue in cheek, whether or not SAP is going to let you, but if you're fortunate enough to where SAP will let you implement S/4HANA on-prem still, you might be able to retain some of that flexibility. But broadly speaking, generalizing here, most SAP sales reps and most SAP pursuits are pushing very hard to get you to the cloud, and not only to the cloud, but to the public cloud. That is the ultimate utopia that SAP wants to get its customer base to. They want, in a perfect world, everyone would be on public cloud, that SaaS, multi-tenant model, and very limited variability between customers, because that allows them to scale the product, and they can be a lot more profitable in that way. They only have one system to maintain. They can drive standard processes, which sounds good in theory, but operational reality is where the rubber meets the road, and that's where a lot of these projects fail. Is that lack of flexibility that a big, complex organization typically needs is not as enabled with S/4HANA as it would have been in an on-prem ECC environment. So that's a big part of why ECC to S/4HANA implementations are failing. Of course, SAP has Joule, its AI, Copilot, its AI tool that it's enabling and offering to people that move to S/4HANA Cloud. But that's another reason why a lot of companies aren't moving to S/4HANA on-prem, is because they want Joule, they want the AI stuff from SAP, and to do that, they have to be in the cloud. So a lot of challenges there. I don't think it really has much to do with Joule or AI. I think it has more to do with the fundamentals of ERP implementation. Richard on TikTok says, I think we're using AI wrong. We're setting it up after email. Why not in front or before? Not sure what you mean by that. If you could clarify your question there, Richard, that'll help me, because I'm not quite following you there. Okay, I have to say this because I can relate to you. Tuma Kamori on TikTok, who asked for some advice, said, my work friends are giving me grief about my receding hairline. What do you say to combat this? I don't know. I clearly have a receding hairline too, so I can help you with that. And that I would suggest a different podcast discussion for that, but I thought it was funny because I have the same problem. And then Matthew said, would love to chat on Teams sometime. I work in the SAP space and think we could collaborate. Sure, I would love to, and feel free to reach out to me, and we can set up some time. So I want to get to a couple case studies here. I talked about how the data points pointed to a high degree of AI failures and or AI initiatives that fail to deliver business results. I want to talk about a couple of case studies here. One is one that it just hit the news yesterday, over the weekend. I think it was yesterday. Someone on our team sent me this article, but it was about, it related to Ford. Ford, the automotive company, one of the big three auto manufacturers in the United States. They ended up having to retrain, or rehire, I should say. They had to rehire more of their 300 to 350 veteran graybeard engineers after AI-driven automated quality systems failed to deliver the quality the company expected. So long story short, Ford tried to roll out an AI tool that would handle quality and quality checks and things of that nature, which is a big deal in the automotive industry. The quality is a big deal for any manufacturer, but especially in the automotive industry, where quality isn't just a recall or a defective product. It's one that could cause death or severe injury, bodily harm, things of that nature, and it's highly regulated. So it's a pretty big deal when your quality systems are failing. And they tried to roll out AI with their quality systems, which I would, if I'm playing armchair quarterback here, I would say, why would you pick quality as a place to start with AI? If I were Ford, I would start somewhere else, like production planning, or somewhere that didn't have something that didn't have as much of a customer facing and regulatory impact, but that maybe there's something behind that I just don't know. But the VP of vehicle hardware engineering, his name is Charles Poon. He was quoted in this article in the BBC, from the BBC. It said, mistakenly, We thought that by just introducing AI and ingesting the design requirements that we had, that would produce a high quality product. Turns out it wasn't true. And so what Poon went on to say is that artificial intelligence is a fantastic tool, but it's only as good as the information you use to train it. Veteran engineers left before their institutional knowledge could be transferred into the systems meant to replace them. We're here chatting about AI and ERP, hype versus reality. We've got a lot more to cover. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control. Stick around.
I met her in a club down in Old Soho, where you drink champagne and it tastes like Coca-Cola. C-O-L-A.
If you only attend one event this year, make it Digital Stratosphere 2026. It's our annual flagship conference. It's going to be September 9th through 11th in Denver, Colorado, the same location as we held it last year. It's 3 days where digital leaders, ERP practitioners, and transformation experts come together for no-spin, vendor-neutral conversations on ERP, AI, and digital transformation. There's no marketing fluff. There's no pay-to-play sponsorships, just real practitioners sharing real lessons. Go to thirdstage-consulting.com/stratosphere to learn more and register. Tickets are limited, and these always sell out, and I'd love to see you there. Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 280. We're here talking about AI and ERP hype versus reality. We're talking about everything from case studies, lessons learned, things you should do to make your AI and ERP initiatives more successful. This is a post I posted to LinkedIn recently and is meant to be funny, and I thought it was cool. And this is where AI comes in handy. And clearly I used AI to generate this image. If you're watching or if you're listening to the audio only version of this podcast, essentially what this is, it's a old school, like an old Western wanted dead or alive poster. It's kind of hand sketched, hand drawn on the old paper. And it's got a picture of someone that looks like it could be me. It says wanted dead or alive for crimes against the industry, known to tell the truth, challenge the narrative, expose risk, question the plan, and defend clients, not agendas. And it was meant to poke fun at the fact that a lot of people in this industry want to silence my voice or voices like mine. Because a lot of what I say is not intended to run counter to their narrative. It's meant to run in alignment with what customer needs are. What our clients need and want is where 99% of my thinking comes from. So a lot of people think I'm just trying to be disruptive. I'm trying to be a thorn in the side of ERP vendors and AI vendors and big four consultants and whatnot. I'm not. I'm just looking at things from the lens of clients and what's best for them and the solution that's going to be best for them. And spoiler alert, most of what vendors and big system integrators and big four consultants deliver or propose is not in customer best interest. It just rarely is. And I'm not saying you shouldn't hire a big vendor or a big four consulting firm, but man, we've got to manage these guys much better because it's out of control, some of the things that happen in this industry. And the fact that I call this stuff out, I mean, I leave it to the audience. If people don't like it, then don't listen or watch what I say. But the fact that so many people do makes me think maybe I'm onto something. I can't imagine all these people going on 1 million followers on YouTube and, you know, over 60,000 followers on LinkedIn. I can't imagine they're all just following me because they hate what I say and they don't want to hear it, but they do want to hear it. I'm maybe some do are following me for that reason, but I'm thinking there might be something to what I'm saying here. But drop in the comments, why do you follow me? I'm just curious. Why you follow me? Why do you follow the thought leadership of Third Stage as a team? I'd love to hear your feedback. Is it because you agree? Do you disagree? Are you just trying to learn? I'd love to hear, in all seriousness and sincerity, what that is. But this is a fun little post to LinkedIn that I tried to do. I also had one recently or not too long ago where I had again, AI generated, although I could have done this for real, I suppose. It's a picture of me with tape over my mouth and it just says banned or silenced or something like that. And that's, I think, what a lot of people love is for me just to shut the hell up. But I enjoy fighting for customers and for what I believe to be right in this industry, and also believe in fighting against what's wrong with this industry. And most of these are not personal things. It's more of a dysfunctional structure of the company or of the industry. And I think that's the real problem here. So I want to come back though to right before the break, we were talking about Ford AI, the AI quality failure. So as a recap, if you're just joining, Ford tried to roll out AI to replace hundreds of engineers, and the AI project failed they tried, or they did hire back those veteran engineers. So they assumed that AI could do the work that these 300 plus engineers were doing. They roll it out and find out there's a bunch of quality issues, which, by the way, if you're an auto manufacturer, don't start with quality. That would be the last place I would start, in all seriousness, because your lives are at stake, people's safety are at stake. It's a highly regulated environment. So do something else. Start with a back office, low risk sort of thing. Then figure out, once you figure out how AI is going to work in your company, then roll it out to quality. But I don't run Ford. That's above my pay grade, apparently. So that it's easier to say, I suppose, than to execute in a boardroom. But the result is that quality dropped as a result of this AI rollout. Output didn't meet expectations, and they had to hire the engineers back, which I'm just I would love to have been a fly in the room for one or more of those conversations. Like, hey, I know I laid you off because I was replacing you with AI, but turns out AI kind of sucks. Would you please come back and help us fix the mess? I just would love to hear what the response would be. Love to know what your response would be too. Drop in the comments. I'm just curious, like, what would you do? Would you go back? Because I imagine some of you would probably say, screw that. I wouldn't go back. I'd rather be unemployed and go keep looking for a job. Or some might genuinely want to help. Some might use it as an opportunity to make a little extra money. I'd love to hear how you'd respond to that. I'm not sure how I'd respond. I have mixed feelings about it, which is why I asked. But here's a quote from the VP of Vehicle Hardware Engineering, just as a refresher on this case study. They said, mistakenly, we thought that by just introducing AI and ingesting the design requirements we had, that would produce a high quality product. Turns out it wasn't true. And so there's 3 lessons here with this Ford AI case that I want to highlight. One is tribal knowledge isn't documented, it's lived. I mean, that's what, at the very beginning of this podcast, I played for you the spreadsheet guy video short, or one in the series. If you don't follow, you can follow my YouTube shorts and TikTok and Instagram. You'll find that series on my channels there, the Spreadsheet Guy series. But the reason I started doing that is to show how tribal knowledge works in organizations. And it's not meant to portray it as a good or bad thing. It's just, it is what it is. Tribal knowledge exists. It lives. And Ford lost all this institutional knowledge before they could get out of the heads of anyone. And then AI couldn't replicate it because it was never written down. It was never documented anywhere. And so if your AI strategy assumes your senior people are easy to replace, then you don't have a strategy. You have a future lawsuit, especially in the case of Ford. If you're a highly regulated environment, like if you're in pharmaceuticals or aerospace and defense, don't do what Ford did. Your consequences would be even higher than it was for Ford. So that's lesson number 1. Tribal knowledge isn't documented, it's lived. Lesson number 2, never lead with we're replacing you. If you tell your team AI is going to replace them, then why would they help you train it? Why would they share the tribal knowledge? Why would they cooperate with the rollout? You've just told them their job is to make themselves obsolete. That's not leadership. That's organizational sabotage. I actually have a episode of Spreadsheet Guy that I filmed. It hasn't been released yet. It'll probably be released just before or after this podcast episode comes out. So keep an eye out for it. But it's basically Spreadsheet Guy meeting AI guy. And essentially the premise of it is that they collude, basically. So Spreadsheet Guy is the master of tribal knowledge and, the heroics that he uses to run the company or to run his part of the company. And then he realizes, instead of AI being a problem or a threat, he finds a way to collude with AI guy to basically make themselves both indispensable to the organization. So they form somewhat of an alliance. So keep an eye out for that. I'm having fun with that, and that'll probably be an ongoing thread in the series. But I bring that up, that example up, because that's what where a lot of people are, is they view AI as a threat. And it's crazy to me to seeing some of these public announcements where the CEOs, the leaders are coming out saying, hey, we expect to reduce headcount by X amount by rolling out this new AI tool. And on one hand, the investors will drive the stock price up, which is great. In the short term, that's going to help you probably if you make those sorts of public announcements. But under the hood, under the surface of what's really happening in the organization, you've just tanked morale. And that project is probably going to fail because you tanked morale. So congratulations, you got the stock bump. Your valuation went up, but the bad news is it's never going to happen. It's never going to materialize. And I would argue your stock's going to tank more than it would have if you just never announced anything. It's going to come off worse because now you've not misled investors necessarily, but you've misstated expectations. So never lead with her replacing you. That's lesson 2. And then lesson 3, don't start AI in the highest stakes part of your business. Ford chose quality, a regulated, safety-critical, customer-facing function in an industry where defects can kill people. So that's not where you piloted new technology. It's a terrible place to start the new technology or to pilot it. That's where you protect what's already working. So here's the kicker. Ford had just topped the J.D. Power 2026 U.S. Initial Quality Study among mainstream brands, #1 for the first time in 16 years. And they had to undo their AI initiative to get there. So that's what's crazy. So the AI didn't get them there. The AI almost prevented them from getting there. So they hire these engineers back. Then they get announced as the top quality rankings. Now, I'm not 100% clear if that ranking was before they tried the AI initiative or after or whatever. But either way, it just shows you what was at stake. That failure happens, and they're expected to be the #1 in safety. So if Ford, with all their resources, talent, and engineering depth, got this wrong, what does that mean for the rest of us? So just be very, very careful about where you point AI first. That was a big faux pas, obviously a big mistake on the part of leadership at Ford. And I would use that as a cautionary tale for any organization considering an AI or even an ERP initiative. If you're thinking of using your AI initiative as a way to replace employees, first of all, I would highly question whether or not that is realistic. Second of all, even if it is realistic, I would be very careful about how you go about that, because if you lead with, hey, I'm going to use this tool to replace you, why would I cooperate with you in rolling out the AI tool? Why would I give you the tribal knowledge? Why would I help ensure that the AI tool is trained if I know it's going to replace me? So I think executives need to stop thinking that way. It's really bizarre to me that so many companies are overtly coming out and saying, hey, we're going to use AI to replace our employees. Okay, investors might like that message, and yeah, it's going to help your stock price, and maybe that's why executives are saying it, but you're going to get a mass revolt, sort of a pushback, a revolution from your employees, and it's not going to be good. So I think leaders just need to be smarter about how they're leading some of these AI initiatives and what they're leading with. And secondly, I would say, do you really plan on replacing employees? Do you need to replace employees? I mean, why not use the employees you have, make them better at their jobs, grow the company, and maybe you don't hire as many people, or maybe you lose some people through attrition. You don't need to replace them as quickly as in the past. That could be your strategy. But to say that I'm going to replace all my engineers on the quality side of things when I'm a highly regulated product or a highly regulated company, that's a little questionable to me. I'd love to hear the audience thoughts on that. Did Ford mess up here? Or is that an innocent mistake that we all would have made? It's easy. I suppose it's easy to look back and say, they really screwed it up. Shame on them. We weren't there. I wasn't there in the boardroom advising them or helping them in that decision. So I don't know what the rationale was there. But the COO of Ford came out and said, and this is a quote, "We had been relying more and more on automated quality systems and not getting the desired results. We brought back technical specialists and they hunt for failure points before a part ever reaches the plant floor." Could you imagine being one of those guys that gets called back? I mean, imagine like your boss tells you, hey, we're done with you. We're replacing you with AI. And then 6 months or 12 months later, it's like, ooh, guess what? We need you back. Can you come back and help us out? Here's a question for the audience. What would you do? Would you go back? Would you play hardball and have them double your pay or something? Would you find satisfaction in knowing they couldn't live without you and that the AI tool couldn't do your job better than you? I'm just curious to see what you think. And I suppose I don't have a good answer for that. I haven't thought about it. Back to the question on TikTok, someone said, hey, your job in consulting is the only one that's going to get replaced or go out of business. And I haven't thought much about what I would do if that happened. I'm just, trying to lean into where the industry is going and enjoying it while I can. So I'd be curious to hear from you all what you would do. Let's see here. Here's a question from Puridano on YouTube. It says, will AI be capable of replacing UI forms? Is this a priority for customer experience? So UI being user interface. Could AI be a priority for customer experience in the form of user interface forms? I think so. I think AI, if anything, will become the new user interface. I mean, you think about, I was talking about how I was certified in SAP. I was actually first certified in SAP back in the late 90s when it was R3, which is the old version of SAP. And I still remember I know this is true for JD Edwards and, legacy systems that existed prior to say, 2005. You used to have to memorize transaction codes. Instead of being menu driven where you like the Windows look and feel where you go to the top, you go to production and then you go to a drop down that says, create production order or whatever it is. Instead of doing that, you would, back in the day, you had to remember like 4-digit transaction codes, like XY123 will take you to the production order screen. And then from there, you can enter the information. But you had to memorize that. You had to know what code to go to. And I always think about that when I think about user experience and user interface and customer experience and how far along ERP systems have come. But I think AI is the next evolution in that, where now I can just prompt AI almost like as though I'm talking to a person. I don't really care where in the system it resides. I don't need to care what menu drop down you need to go to. I can just ask AI, hey, create a production plan for me for, the week of July 1st through the 7th, using these parameters, whatever. Now, the problem here is that I think when you get AI results from prompts like that, there's a false sense of security, like it must be right because AI is smarter than me, it's smarter than all of us, allegedly. So whatever information AI gives me must be right. And I think that's a fallacy of sorts that a lot of organizations fall into. But I do think, yes, AI will become the user interface, but we have so far to go to get to that point where we can reliably say AI is the front end tool that employees and maybe even customers use to access information they need out of our systems. So great questions here. Here's a question from Natasha on LinkedIn. Natasha says, what are some ways that companies that have had successful ERP implementations prepare for them, and how might AI help with these preparations? This is a really good question. I think AI can certainly help with implementation. It can help remove some of the messy, noisy grunt work and detailed work that goes into an implementation. So you think about things like data cleansing and data migration. That's something that's ripe for an AI tool. You look at creating testing scripts and tracking test scripts for user acceptance testing. That's something that AI can and should help with. You go back even further in the implementation. You talk about requirements traceability. That's what we're using AI for. That we're using our AI tool to help clients make sure that all the requirements they need and want out of the implementation they're actually getting. And then we flag, AI will help flag which of those thousands of requirements are not being met or are at risk. And so I think you have to look at things like that things that have been manual and very tedious and expensive. Those are things that AI can help automate. Another one is the actual configuration and development. A lot of these, especially like SAP implementations and even Oracle implementations, you'd have back in the day, and you still have this, but I think it's going away. You would have these big offshore centers where they would do all the deep dive, heavy lifting around configuration and development and whatnot. Whereas now, could you use AI to do a lot of that configuration and development for you? It's probably going to be faster. It's going to be cheaper, but it's still going to require some sort of human validation and human intervention. I think that's where companies are struggling the most is, okay, AI is a cool tool, but how do we interact with humans knowing that the AI tool is still relatively immature and it's not where we need it to be long-term? How do we navigate that? And I think that's one of the big problems that companies have, but that's a great question. Comment from Sandy Schultz on YouTube says Microsoft is ahead of everyone else with the new and improved public SaaS model. That you could be right. I know they're ahead of many other vendors. Would love to hear why you think that is. What is it about the new and improved public SaaS model that you think puts Microsoft ahead? I'd love to just hear your feedback and your experience with it so far. Comment from Jason on LinkedIn says, from a delivery perspective, historically, tier 1 implementations have taken 18 to 24 months, with implementation services often consulting multiples of 8 to 12 times the software itself. As AI matures, do you expect a fundamental reset of those benchmarks? What will the new normal look like? And I think you're right. I think it'll have to come down. It's inevitable that it will. So back to the point of someone on TikTok that said, basically, my job is at risk. Could be true. But I think it's especially true for the really technical side of things. Like when I think about configuration development, the data migration, the data cleansing, those technical work streams tend to delay projects, and they also tend to chew up a lot of budget and a lot of hours. I think it'll address the budget and hours problem to some degree, but I don't think it's going to solve the 18 to 24 month thing, because usually it's not the technology that's causing it to be 18 to 24 months, and in many cases longer than that. It's usually something more related to the operations, to the organizational change, the way the project was managed, the program management. That often leads to things getting off track. Your executive team is misaligned. They're not all on the same page. They make decisions slowly, and that slows things down. Those human and operational dynamics are not solved by AI. AI will solve the technical dimension, which again will save on the cost, I would say, but the time frame I think is going to be comparable. If anything, I think AI might actually extend the timeline, not intentionally, of course, but because it makes it more difficult to integrate AI tools into the organization. It's a bigger change for organization, and it just takes organizations longer to get to that future state now, because it's a bigger change now than it was in the past. In the past you had a big change, but now with AI, it's an even bigger change, which means it's more of an impact to your operations and your people, which means it's going to take you longer. So I would say, if I were to predict, I don't think the timeline is going to change. I think the cost will change in the favor of the customers. It's going to hurt consultants, especially the technical developers with big offshore centers like Accenture, Deloitte, all the big four, the big GSIs. I think they're the ones that are going to be hurt the most. But I think when it comes to like program management, change management, and all the operational stuff, that's the part that is still going to be difficult. AI is not going to solve that. I think that's why, back to counter the TikTok comment, I think that's why our company is actually thriving right now in this AI world, is because of the impact it's having on businesses, and they need help getting through that. So I think cost-wise, yes, it might help. Timeline, it probably won't. But love to hear everyone else's thoughts on that question there. Turns out Sandy on YouTube was using new and improved in air quotes. So thank you. So maybe you're being facetious. I don't know. But whatever you think about Microsoft or any other vendor, love to hear it here. Osmi on TikTok says, any comments working with the Japanese? I'm going on an expat program to implement AI in presumably a Japanese business. I would say Japan and Asian cultures, it's interesting from a change management perspective, because decision making is so what's the word I'm looking for? It's I'm struggling with the right word here. It's decision making is different because there's not overt resistance, there's not overt disagreement, and sometimes people agree when they don't disagree, or when they don't really agree. And this is not true only for Japan, but for other Asian cultures as well. And so sometimes you think you have consensus. That was the word I was looking for, consensus. Sometimes you think you have consensus, but really you don't. It's because there's so much respect to authority and deference to the hierarchy and authority in Asian cultures that sometimes that hides or masks the underlying lack of alignment, the underlying operational issues. For example, when we're working with multinational clients, a lot of times, Western Europe and US and Latin America operations they'll tell you like, hey, this isn't working. Here's why, or here's a problem. They'll sort of challenge the way the project is going. But in Asian cultures, they're more likely to nod their heads and agree when they know it's not going to work in reality. And it's not because they're lying. It's because there's such a deferential treatment of authority and hierarchies and whatnot. There's a really interesting case study. I forgot what book this was in, but it was a book I read probably 20 years ago, 30 years ago, maybe. But it was a book about, I think it was a Korean airline. It might've been Korean Airlines, but it was an airline. I believe it was in Korea. And it was a case study of it. It was a plane wreck. It was a catastrophe, and everyone on the plane died, and it was a big deal. But they analyzed this case study, and they talk about the culture, the Korean or Asian culture, which is the pilot was making the decisions. The co-pilot, according to the black box, which is the recorder they have on airplanes, and they can go back and listen to what was happening before the plane wreck. But they got from the black box that the pilot was wanting to do one thing, and I don't recall the details of what that was, but the pilot wanted to do one thing. The co-pilot was questioning something, or alarming, kind of waving the red flag to some degree, but the co-pilot backed off in deference to the pilot. And the pilot was saying, no, this is what we're going to do. And the co-pilot, just sort of backed down. And as a result, it turns out the co-pilot was right, pilot was wrong, plane crashes, everyone dies. And it was a case study or a use case or an example of how that cultural dimension factored into that potential crash. And it was a good lesson learned for working with cultures like Japan and others. And I apologize, I don't mean to generalize or over stereotype Asian cultures. I know Japan is different from Korea, which is different from China and other parts of Asia Pacific, but that's been my general experience. And I always thought that was a really useful case study, just to understand that it's different, especially if you're coming from the Western world, if you're coming from Western Europe or US or even Latin America. It's just different. The way decisions are made, the way authority and subordinates interact is very different. And you have to navigate that differently than you would in other parts of the world. So HTL Czar on TikTok says SAP stocks are taking a beating currently. Yes, they are. But to be fair, so is Microsoft. I have investments all over the place in technology. And I know Microsoft, Oracle, they're all getting hammered right now. Although Microsoft's rebounding, I'm not sure why or what that is, but Microsoft seems to be doing okay right now. Let's see. Yeah, lots of questions coming in. Thank you for that. Let me keep going here, and I'll come back to these questions here. So that was the Ford example. We were in the middle of talking about Ford, the Ford AI failure. And one last point that I didn't make is that Ford topped the JD Power 2026 U.S. initial quality study among mainstream brands for the first time in 16 years. So it's number one in quality in 2026. So that's what's at stake. You look at a company that's already leading in quality, and then they want to use AI. It backfires. It's a problem. I'll be curious to see if in 2027 they still have that same ranking, knowing that they had the problem with AI on the quality side of things. So let me know what you think of Ford, by the way. Did Ford do the right thing by hiring back all their engineers that were first replaced by AI and then asked to come back to solve all the problems that AI turns out could not fix? Love to hear what you think there. I've also talked in this podcast before, and I'll bring it up again because it is such an interesting case study, and that is Starbucks. And that was a failure that just happened a few weeks ago. I think it was in May of this year in 2026, where they retired its AI-powered automated counting inventory tool about 9 months after they rolled it out in September. They started the rollout in September across 11,000 stores in North America. They pulled the plug in May because the computer version miscounted and mislabeled items. It confused similar types of milk or missed them entirely. And then baristas were actually glad that the AI tool went away, which I thought was interesting. The people that worked at Starbucks were very thankful that they pulled the plug on this AI tool. And they said, thank you for trusting the partners over unreliable spatial recognition to handle these counts. That was a quote from one of the baristas from Supply Chain Dive magazine or website. And they say the root cause was the reliability ceiling. The model worked in clean pilots, but degraded against real world variants. So let's talk a second about the Starbucks computer vision inventory. In September of last year, Starbucks rolled out an AI-powered automated inventory counting tool across 11,000 stores in North America. And then 9 months later, they pulled the plug. So what went wrong? Well, the computer vision model worked beautifully in clean pilots, same lighting, same shelf layout, same packaging, same conditions, same everything. But when you dropped it into 11,000 stores with real chaos and reality hit, you have different milks, similar packaging, varied store layouts, people putting things in different places, and the model couldn't keep up. It miscounted, it mislabeled, it confused similar items, and then it missed others entirely. Now, I'm going to play for you this clip. This is a presentation I did for my YouTube channel where I actually walked through some slides, a very short presentation analyzing this case study in more detail. So I want to share it with you here because I think it's very relevant and it dives more into some of the nuances that I just mentioned. So let's roll that clip. Most of you probably know Starbucks. Starbucks is a massive coffee chain throughout the world. I don't know how many stores they have total, but this case study entails or involves 11,000 of their stores that they rolled out AI to in that first wave of their AI rollout. And this information I'll share here from you today is a combination of facts from public record, as well as my presumptions or assumptions around what probably happened and what some of the lessons and takeaways are. And most importantly, the lessons and takeaways and the things I would recommend to you going forward are things that are relevant, not only if you're going through an AI initiative, but also if you're implementing any sort of technology. You'll see that this presentation might as well have been written 20 years ago for ERP implementations. Unfortunately, for better or for worse, that's what I think of this presentation. So let's dive into it. Let's talk about what happened here. So just 9 months ago, in September of 2026, Starbucks decides they're going to roll out or go live with their new AI tool across 11,000 stores. It took them, they were live on the system for 9 months, and 99% that accuracy claimed not delivered. So 99% accurately claimed not delivered. That means they got a tiny, tiny fraction of accuracy that they were expecting. And here's what happened in brief, based on public record. It was deployed as part of the CEO's back to Starbucks turnaround, which is the tool they used was a LiDAR and a tablet carrier seemed to be used throughout this. And it was meant to really automate the Starbucks experience to where you would have automation that would track inventory, know when to order inventory. It would schedule employees and workers based on seasonality or based on expected foot traffic and whatnot.
And the vendor claimed 99% accuracy at the time, but they did not get 99% accuracy or anywhere close to it. And so they retired this system toward the end of May 2026, just 9 months after using it. So they spent a lot of money, a lot of time. I imagine it was a lot of disruption to the employees at these 11,000 stores, and they had nothing to show for it at the end of it. So one of the quotes that we saw here from an internal Starbucks memo that was released publicly is that the thought behind it was great, but the execution was proving difficult. So I found that to be very interesting and a really interesting takeaway there. And there's so many things that went wrong here that were challenges in this initiative or in this case study that I think we can all learn from. One was that the system could not distinguish similar products. So it got confused based on materials or ingredients that looked similar. So it couldn't keep track of the inventory that was expected. They showed up, I guess there was a promotional video that showed the tool being used or failed to register a syrup bottle sitting on the shelf. And then the video was later taken down. But I don't know why they would use that as a promotional video, but apparently there was a video of the tool failing to register a syrup bottle that was sitting right in front of it. So it was just a kind of a micro example of what went wrong there and some of the other problems that happened. And then trust amongst employees collapsed below the usable threshold. It just wasn't sustainable because workers were having to recount things. They didn't trust the AI. There's too much inaccuracy. So it was actually creating a time tax, not a time saver. They expected that AI would actually make things better, make people more efficient, but it actually made things worse. And they spent all this time and money to make people's jobs less efficient. And then what's interesting is this stuff was demoed. The functionality was demoed during the demo process, but that didn't translate to store floor accuracy. So lighting, stocking, shelf reorganizations, visual clutter, all this stuff, all the nuances or the differences in the way that different stores stock their shelves or manage the back stock room was different enough that it created problems and disruption in the way that the system could handle some of this. So that was a presentation that I filmed for my YouTube channel recently, just really unpacking that Starbucks case study a bit more. And so what I want to do is share some of the lessons here. And one of the funniest things I think that came from this case study is how the baristas, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I don't drink coffee, so I never go to Starbucks except when my wife makes me. I don't know if it's baristas or baristas. I think it's baristas. I don't use fancy words like that, like venti, latte, grande. I don't know the language of Starbucks, including baristas. But anyway, the people that work there, basically the people that give you your coffee, the actual employees celebrated when the tool was retired. So the quote from the article that I pulled from here is that they said, "Thank you for trusting the partners over unreliable spatial recognition to handle these counts." So that's the employees publicly thanking leadership for canceling the AI tool. It's really crazy. And I would love to know how much they spent on that AI tool, by the way. If if you've got any inside intel on Starbucks and how much they spent on their AI, drop it in the chat. I'd love to secretly know what that number is. But here are the three lessons, that takeaways from that. One is pilots succeed in clean condition, but reality is where the problems start. So when you're doing user acceptance testing and training and all that stuff, just make sure you base it on reality, not what you're designing in a war room with whiteboards and stuff, but what's actually going to happen out on the shop floor, in the warehouse, back in accounting, procurement, all that stuff. Second, watch out for the negative ROI trap. Starbucks expected people to free up their time to spend more time with customers, but instead they spend more time fixing the AI problems. So it actually delivered a negative ROI. They spent all this money and made people less efficient. So it's a double kicker. So you definitely want to avoid that. And that's a problem that happens time and time again with AI, ERP, and other tech initiatives. And then lesson 3, the employees know first. The frontline workers know whether the tool is working long before leadership does. And this is where it gets weird, because a lot of times leadership refuses to listen to their employees, but they'll listen to their consultants and vendors that are telling them everything's fine. Like, everything's fine. This is just a normal hiccup. This is a normal part of the process. The project status report says green, so everything's fine, right? And they convince leaders that everything's fine, but then you've got a revolution brewing over here with your employees. And then, the consultants and vendors just point the finger and say, well, they're part of the problem. They're just resisting change. We'll just put some change management in place to address that later. It never works. And so if your shop floor people are quietly working around the AI, that's a signal. And if they're openly resisting it, then that's a 5-alarm fire.
So pay attention to your employees. In fact, I would argue that you should pay more attention to your employees than you do your vendors and consultants, because they don't have the same vested interest that your employees and you as a leader do. So you want to pilot to production gaps, pilot to production gaps are invisible until you scale. So you don't want to assume your pilot proves anything until you've stress tested it with variances, exception scenarios, and the real humans who are going to use it every day. Labeling and stocking inventory at different stores, AI had been tested, but it assumed a fairly universal approach to inventory placement and inventory management. And it turns out that was not true. And then they also expected that this AI tool would save time and money, because now the baristas wouldn't have to spend time counting inventory. They could spend time with customers. But it turns out they had to spend more time fixing AI, that it diminished all the expected savings, and it canceled it out, to the point where they spent all this money on AI to then have employees spend more time and money go fixing what AI screwed up. So that's a trap you've got to watch out for. You're going to spend a ton of money on AI or any sort of technology tool. ERP is the same thing, CRM, et cetera. Don't spend a ton of money on the tool only to find that you've got negative business value, and be sure you get it right. These are all things that can be avoided. These are not, oh, wow, I can't, executives sometimes act like this is some big surprise. Like, I can't believe this happened. Well, you look at what they did and how the things materialize. Of course, you would expect it to be a failure. And I think a lot of us here listening and watching here today probably could have called that and said, well, that is going to be a failure. And that's something we all could have predicted here. But the ERP lesson here and the AI lesson is the pilot to production reliability gaps are invisible until you start to scale it. So I can't tell you how many times, like in an ERP user or a ERP system testing environment, everything passes with flying colors. You get to UAT, sometimes even then it passes with flying colors, although oftentimes it'll completely fail UAT, even though it passed technology testing, because it doesn't work from an operational perspective. But what's even worse is when you have that false sense of security, because it passes all the UAT test, user acceptance test. But what often happens is they didn't have the complete scenarios. They didn't have all those exceptions and all the sort of the reality of how the operation really works. They only had a small subset of it, and then it all passes, and then everyone feels like, oh, things are great, we can go live now. Then they go live, and then they use it in reality, and it's totally different than what they tested in UAT. It sounds like that's what happened here at Starbucks. It's a classic mistake. It's a common mistake. It's one that is absolutely avoidable. And this is part of why you don't want your technologist leading your testing process. I still don't understand why leaders insist on having their system integrator do all the user acceptance testing, because all they care about is making sure the technology works. They don't care about whether it works for your business. They just care that the system works. They deliver a working system. You're paying the subscriptions for it. They're making money off you. They're making the money off the services. They make money when you go live, but they don't get penalized when things go off the rails. And so they benefit no matter what. You're the one that has to pay the price. So if you're a leader in a company and you're implementing AI or ERP, just take ownership. Take the matter into your own hands. Stop thinking that Deloitte, Accenture, KPMG, Capgemini, all the big tier 2, tier 1 system integrators, stop thinking that they're going to do this for you, because they can't and they won't. The data supports it. It's been the same story for 30 years. I'm almost tired of talking about it, but eventually, hopefully, the industry will start to catch on that they need to take more of an active role in managing these projects from a business perspective. Spend a lot less time focusing on the technology and the system integrators and the vendors and all the bells and whistles they want to focus on. So those are some examples. There's other ones too. I'll kind of do a rapid fire review here of some of the other AI failures, and then I want to make sure to get some time to talk about some of the lessons and case studies from our client base. But Volkswagen had a big bang attempt to build one of the unified AI-driven OSs across 12 brands. It ran into billions in operating losses and multi-year product delays. And so the lesson here is avoid big bang modernization. AI requires modular, iterative integration. So if you're going to do any sort of technology initiative, whether it's AI or ERP, don't do a big bang approach if you can help it, unless you're a really small, relatively simple organization, maybe. But if you're of any mid-size, larger enterprise sort of scale, especially if you're multi-location, especially if you're multinational, don't do it. It literally never succeeds. So why play those odds with such a big investment? There's also Taco Bell. I haven't eaten at Taco Bell in years, just as a side note, but I always see the ads on TV and I always think I should try Taco Bell because it looks so good and delicious, but super unhealthy for you. But I've not tried it recently, but I know Taco Bell is a very popular brand. My kids love it. Apparently all the kids love it, but I loved it as a kid too. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. they had a drive-through voice AI that had failures. So, for example, a customer ordering 18,000 cups of water was something that was viral on the internet as a use case or a funny flaw of their AI tool. So it forced a shift to a human AI, a hybrid model. And so just a company like Taco Bell, Volkswagen, Starbucks, Ford, if these companies are failing at their AI initiatives with all the resources, all the money, and the sophistication and maturity that they have as organizations, think about your organization. And if they struggle, what does that mean for you? I mean, I hate to say it, but it means your odds are probably even lower. Although I will say, if I'm going to stereotype or broadly generalize dangerously, which I know sometimes I do, but if I'm going to generalize, I'd say a big company like Starbucks, Volkswagen, Ford are a lot more likely to relegate complete responsibility to a big four consultancy to do this all for them, or someone like a big four, a big, massive tech vendor, let them handle it because they're the experts. And in some ways, these bigger companies are more likely to let these projects get off track. So broad generalization, I know a lot of our mid-market, like manufacturing hands-on types of leaders would never let that happen. They don't like that model. And quite frankly, that's why they hire us. But that's something to be aware of, is you just want to realize that if these big companies are struggling, then it means that anyone can struggle. There's also examples from McDonald's where they had voice ordering that had to be shut down after repeated misunderstandings, like adding ketchup and butter together. So just a few examples there. They're interesting. And then we also look at our client base, and I can't mention these by name because it's not public record and it's confidential, but I can mention the general themes or stories that we're seeing now with companies that are rolling out AI right now. So our teams are out there doing their real jobs while I'm sitting here doing a podcast. They're out actually with clients doing the real stuff. And some of the lessons that we learned so far is that AI is only as good as your data. We're here chatting about AI and ERP, hype versus reality. We've got a lot more to cover. We'll be right back with more Transformation Ground Control. Stick around.
I'm Greg Benton. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer with Third Stage Consulting. And if you are embarking on your digital transformation journey or in the middle of that journey in 2026, you're going to want to see our digital transformation report. This latest edition really dives into a lot of the key trends that we're seeing in the marketplace and the ecosystem right now. It also highlights a number of the things that are happening with AI being an important component and integral part of the ERP systems that are leading the way right now. Also, the shift toward composable and best-of-breed cloud solutions is really accelerating the decline of monolithic ERP replacement. The opportunity to download the report is found at thirdstage-consulting.com. And you'll also find other tools that will help you in the initiatives and the business planning that you're doing for 2026. Don't leave phase zero without it. Reach out today.
I want to encourage you to read our Guide to Organizational Change Management. It's a free report or a free guide that we published. It's one that I actually wrote that talks about best practices and lessons learned as it relates to change management. So as you know, on this podcast, we cover a lot of stuff related to the human sides of change, organizational change management, including training, communications, org design, all kinds of stuff as it relates to change management. So if you're trying to learn more about change management, or you're looking for more direction and ideas on how to get started on your change management strategy and your overall journey, be sure to check out this guide. You can read it by scanning the QR code on the screen in front of you, or in the links below for this particular podcast episode. You can find a link to take you to the page that will allow you to register to go ahead and download that and read it for free. So be sure to check it out. It's the Guide to Organizational Change Management, written by yours truly. I hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think, and hope you enjoy the rest of this episode. Hello, welcome back to Transformation Ground Control, episode number 280. We're here talking about AI and ERP hype versus reality. We're talking about everything from case studies, lessons learned, things you should do to make your AI and ERP initiatives more successful. So I want to stop for a second and talk about this point around how AI is only good as your data. Every AI initiative I've ever seen succeed has one thing in common. The data foundation was solid before AI got layered on top. So if your AI is messed up, if your data is messed up, your AI is not going to work. Your AI is going to be messed up. So every AI initiative I've ever seen fail has the opposite. They have leaders trying to use AI as a shortcut and around the data problems they didn't want to fix. So there's a brutal truth behind this, and that is AI doesn't fix bad data. It just amplifies it faster at scale in ways your team won't see until it's too late. And so that's really important. And so there's three things to put in place before you turn on your AI in your enterprise. You need to make sure you have master data hygiene. You want to make sure your customers, vendors, products, employees, locations, accounts, all that stuff is cleaned up and you don't have duplicates, gaps, or inconsistency, because if you have garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. Data governance is the second thing. Who owns the data? Who validates it? Who has the authority to change master data? How are human processes affecting data, and how can we make sure there's guardrails to make sure it doesn't corrupt the data? And then finally, humans in the loop. We need to make sure, especially in regulated or high stakes environments, you need to make sure that humans are part of the decisions, not using AI to replace them. And in both the Ford and the Starbucks case studies we talked about, they failed largely because they pulled humans out of the loop too early. And so the irony here is that most leaders skip the data work because it's boring, it's slow, it's unsexy. AI is way cooler to talk about and look at and see and touch and feel. But the companies that do the data work, the dirty work, they're the ones who eventually win with AI or even ERP initiatives too. So everyone else is building castles on sand, but don't be the castle on the sand company. So if your master data sucks, your transactional data sucks, if there's no data governance and people keep corrupting the data unknowingly because the data governance and the processes aren't right, AI is not going to add value. You have to figure that stuff out first before you add value, or before you expect to get value out of it. Making sure that you've got the governance. I mentioned that. Who owns the data? Who validates AI outputs? Who's accountable when the system's wrong? You have to keep humans in the loop. That's why I don't quite understand what Ford was thinking when they got rid of their engineers in the name of AI. Terrible idea. Would not recommend it, especially with where AI is now. Maybe 5 years from now, we'll be in a spot where you could say, okay, now we can start laying people off at scale. That'll be unfortunate. That will suck, but now is not the time for sure. AI done right. I talked about our internal AI tool called Mission Control AI. It's a tool set we use at Third Stage. It's the way our team will benchmark to other clients. We've had over 400 digital transformations we've been involved with as paying clients, another 600 or 700 where we've had deep conversations with them about their implementations. Maybe they didn't hire us for our services, but we did have conversations and some learnings from it. So well over 1,000 organizations in our AI data set. And so now when a team, a small team of say 3 to 4 consultants from our team is working with a client, they have access to all 1,000 plus lessons and learnings from 1,000 plus different customers, as well as access to the hundreds of consultants that have worked here over the years and the knowledge base that they brought to the table. So Mission Control AI is a very powerful tool, but even as powerful as it is, even though we're not using it to eliminate jobs, we have not eliminated jobs. We've only grown since we've implemented the tool. And I think we'll continue to grow. And it's another revenue stream for us. So there's monetary benefit to it, but one of them is not to reduce headcount. If anything, it's just making us so much better and stickier with our clients, and it's making us smarter. So each of our people are very smart, but now you're taking that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 person team, and you're adding the collective knowledge of hundreds of consultants, over 1,000 different implementation lessons. Now they have access to that. It's almost like you've got this super brain that's part of your team now. So it can work. And we've seen other clients that have been successful when they've done it the right way. But like I said, it's been difficult. It's not been an easy rollout for us. And we're not by any means a large company that should struggle with a technology initiative. And we're consultants that do this for a living. So you'd think for us it'd be easy, but it was not easy. So if that tells you anything, it means it's probably going to be harder than you expect for most organizations. So I'd say the general lesson here is where AI genuinely wins is where it makes interfaces and ERP systems easier to use, and where you actually get predictive insights and it improves your efficiency and adoption. I think most organizations we work with don't have a problem with too much staff. So it's not like they have a lot of fat to cut. It's more they're not getting the job done. They're not getting the job done right. So focus on allowing AI to be a tool to help your people get the job done right. And I think you'll go a long way to doing that. Just checking here, TikTok. It's harder to find the comments here. Asmi says, yep, that's exactly what I'm seeing from past system implementations. Disruptors are seen as annoying. Gabriel says, what are the main problems with today's ERP systems? One word, cloud. I would say cloud is a big problem. No one wants to talk about it, but cloud is creating a lot of problems for companies because it's creating less flexibility. It's creating vendor lock. It's creating less access or less ownership of data. It's creating less control over what your operations and your workflows are going to look like in the future. Vendors will tell you all day that that's a good thing because they are the experts. They have best practices, blah, 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 blah. That's not true. They build the software a certain way that they think is best, but at some point in the future, if not now, you're going to find many ways that that system is not going to work for your business. And the problem with cloud now is you don't have as much flexibility as you used to have with the on-prem. So I think cloud is the main problem with today's ERP systems. And the fact that we're still implementing ERP systems like it's 1999. That's the other problem. If we would just stop implementing ERP and technology like it's 1999, the world would be a better place. But for some reason, we insist on doing it like it's 1999. Quite frankly, I think it's because the vendors and system integrators are largely living like it's 1999, selling and delivering as though it's 1999, and end customers and their leadership teams are believing that the approach in 1999 is somehow relevant today, when in 1999, failures were through the roof. Here in 2026, they're even greater. Hello, Joe on TikTok says, yo, what do you think about S4HANA? I'm going to pass on that because I have very mixed feelings about S4HANA, and I have very mixed feelings about most ERP systems. But thank you for that. I'll do a separate session on that. How about a whole separate live session on what I really think about SAP S4HANA? That might be kind of fun and interesting. So I want to leave with, well, actually, let me get to some other questions here. There's a bunch of questions I'm not answering that I want to get to before I kind of give you some closing thoughts and takeaways here. Here's a question from Megan on LinkedIn. Megan says, are there certain parts of the implementation process that change when you start working in different regions and cultures? Yeah, absolutely. And this is a good point back to the comment on TikTok around working with a company in Japan and having to navigate different cultures. You just have to you have to understand how the culture that you're working in. I don't mean just geographic, Japanese or Asian culture versus American culture versus European cultures. I don't mean that. I do mean that partially, but I also mean just the culture of your business. Every business in every industry in every country has its own culture. Some are more entrepreneurial than others. Some are very command and control-ish. Some are very flexible and nimble. Some are too rigid. There's just all these different types of cultures. They aren't really good or bad. I think it's easy to pass judgment on different cultures, but we have to understand what those cultures are and adjust our approach accordingly. And this is a great question because most ERP implementation proposals from vendors and system integrators assume a homogeneous culture. It assumes a homogeneous company. In most situations, operationally and organizationally and culturally, there's a lot of diversity in these companies. And when you try to take a cookie cutter approach to implementation, that creates a ton of problems. So you've got to consider the culture you're dealing with, not only from a change management perspective in terms of how you communicate with them, how you bring them along, bring them through the journey, but even more fundamentally to Megan's question here, how do you implement? What's the right strategy for that part of the business? Because it might be different. You might take a more collaborative approach in one part of the world. In another part of the world, it might be more top down. In one part of the world, it might be more, we're going to standardize operations. In another part of the world, it might be a little more flexibility, a little more decentralization. But all that stuff that Megan's asking, you have to decide all that up front. If you don't decide that in your phase zero without your vendor involvement, by the way, because your vendor is going to tell you to do things all in a cookie cutter canned sort of way, and that's not the right answer. And it never is the right answer, by the way, but yet that's what is constantly sold nearly 100% of the time. You've got to do this stuff in phase zero before you bring in the vendor, the system integrator, the technical implementers, because they're just going to go down this path that they're used to that's not going to take these nuances into consideration. And it's these small nuances that aren't so small. These are huge, huge implications. So that's a great question, Megan. Thank you for that. Brady on LinkedIn says, joining late, looking forward to what you have to say here, Eric. Unfortunately, I can't repeat it all. I don't have time for that today, but you can rewind it and go back and watch whatever you might have missed here. So thanks for joining today, Brady. Jason on LinkedIn says, in today's agentic AI era, do ERP security models break down? If today is good enough and over provisioned access works for people, will it still work for thousands of AI agents? That's a great question. I don't have a good handle on that. I'm not a cybersecurity expert by any means, but I do think security is going to be a big problem for AI, not only in terms of IP ownership and IP and confidentiality issues, but also in terms of just internally within an organization, how do you control who can see and do what within a system? If AI does in fact become the user interface, where does security controls reside? Is that in the AI tool, or do we still lean on our ERP system to do that, or is there some other way? There's a lot there that is unknown, in my opinion, and that'd actually be a good topic for a podcast. If I can find a good cybersecurity expert, that may be a good one to bring on here. Brady on LinkedIn says, couldn't you just sync to an on-prem server, Eric, use an AI agent to do that, and then you have the upper hand on data management separate from all the different vendors? Yes, you can. In fact, I would challenge more organizations to ask this question. The word on-prem has such a negative connotation. It's almost like it was cool 20 years ago, but it's not cool anymore. So how dare you even bring up the word on-prem? That's so lame. It's all about the cloud now. It's all about AI. Why is Brady here talking about on-prem? So I want to stop here for a second, because this is a view or an opinion I have that's going to make a lot of cloud salespeople angry. And that is that somewhere along the way, the industry decided that if you're not 100% cloud, you're behind. You're a dinosaur. You're carrying technical debt. You don't get to play with AI. You're not being innovative. You're not an industry leading world-class organization. That's not true. That's marketing. And so keep in mind, vendors get paid when you buy their software. Consultants get paid when you buy their software, at least most consultants. We don't, we're independent, we're agnostic, but most ERP consultants are affiliated and aligned with and get paid by software vendors. So they're going to be telling you the same thing. And the industry analysts are getting paid by the software vendors too. Everyone's telling you that this is reality, but it's not reality. It's where the money is. Your reality has to siphon through or cut through all the crap and all the marketing spin and biases that exist. So don't get me wrong, cloud has real benefits. You have someone else managing your infrastructure. You get faster updates. It's easier to scale, but there's also downsides. You have vendor lock-in, less flexibility, less data ownership and access and control and portability, less control overall with your workflows, multi-year subscription contracts that escalate in cost. And by the way, you don't even know how much they're going to escalate yet until they tell you what it's going to be. And then there's forced standardization that strips out your competitive advantage. So there's a lot of downside risks to cloud you just have to be aware of, and you have to be smart and selective about how you deploy cloud technology. But here's the question that nobody at the vendor wants you to ask is what should actually live where? Now, a cloud vendor is going to tell you everything should be in the cloud. Why would you do anything differently? On-prem's old. It's outdated. It's the technical debt. It's the Stone Ages, whatever. It's not true. It's not as profitable for vendors, but it doesn't mean it's old, bad, or something you shouldn't do. Selectively, of course. Everything in moderation, right? Sort of like a diet. But maybe your back office processes belong in the cloud. That's great. Maybe your differentiating logic like manufacturing or customer facing processes should be on-prem. And whether that be an on-prem system, a custom dev system, whatever, best of breed, composable ERP, it's all fine. Maybe AI orchestration sits on top of both. That might be the smart play. So the future isn't cloud only. It's fit for purpose. Something that's hybrid, strategic, customer controlled, and you shouldn't let the vendor or a Gartner Quadrant or Big Four consultants shame you out of architecture choices that are right for your business. So it's your business, your data, your choice. Don't let anyone take that away from you under the banner of modernization. Great question. I would highly challenge every executive out there to challenge the mainstream narrative, because remember, the mainstream narrative is meant to sell you more software in the way that's most profitable for the vendors. The most profitable model for the vendors, I would argue, is the most disruptive to end customers. And if you see this book right behind me here, it's Welcome to the Machine. It's the one with the black cover. It's my new book. It came out about 2 months ago. It's by far my favorite one that I've written because it exposes a lot of the stuff that's wrong with the industry right now. In fact, I'm going to pop up while we're doing it. I'll do a shameless self-promotion here. There's a QR code upper left corner here. You can scan that. It'll take you to the page where you can read about the book. You can buy it there electronically. You can get the audiobook, or you can get a physical hardcover paperback delivered to you anywhere in the world. I'll leave that up for the rest of the session here, the rest of the discussion, but be sure to check out that book because I talk in there about how customers, vendors, and consultants are dysfunctional. It's a dysfunctional, toxic relationship of sorts, and it's not going to change anytime soon. So it's not meant to just complain about something that can't be changed. The book actually prescribes what to do about it. First is understand what are the inner workings of consultant, vendor, and customer. And they all, by the way, contribute to dysfunction, and they contribute to failure in their own unique, unintentional ways. But it creates this machine of failure. And so the technology industry has done a great job of building a machine that delivers profit, guaranteed profit and growth to vendors and consultants, but customers are almost guaranteed failure. And that on the surface is bizarre. I can't believe that
the whole multi-billion-dollar industry exists that operates that way with that big of a flaw, but here we are. And it's nothing new, by the way. It's always been this way. But this book is the first one I know of where it talks about all the sort of the organizational psychology and the way the interactions happen. And then more importantly, what you can do about it to overcome that, to know that the machine is going to persist, but what can you do longer term to ensure that those things go away? So, or that those issues get resolved and that you navigate these projects in a way that's beneficial to you. And it's meant to show you how the machine can be shut down the way it is now, or not shut down completely, but shut down for you to where the negative stuff doesn't affect you, but you can turn it to your advantage if you know how to challenge and confront the machine. So that's what the whole book is about. I highly recommend it. And I know I'm totally biased, but I do really like it. Here's a question from his talk on LinkedIn. What is the 2026 best practices then? What makes 1999 bad? I don't know that 1999 is bad. It's just that that's right at the time. So I was starting my career right at the time that the Y2K.com bubble was building and brewing. It feels a lot like the AI bubble, the early stages, this AI bubble. But I just saw, even then, I was 24, 25, 26 years old at the time, new to consulting, new to the corporate world. And I just saw so many leaders and organizations just in this mad dash, just going crazy, trying to upgrade their systems in time for the Y2K risk and the end of the world that was apparently going to happen if we didn't all upgrade in mass in the 90s. And it was a lot of irrational decision-making, a lot of technology first focus. And I feel like that ripple effect, that approach is just, the momentum has continued on for 27 years. And I think it's not that 1999 was bad, it's just that it was irrational. It was too focused on technology. It missed all the most important stuff, which is the organizational and operational strategic stuff. And you had the big players, the big vendors and SIs that were out promoting that approach that was failing, and they still are. So I guess, I don't know if I'm answering your question. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying the approach was bad, and it still is. So 2026 best practice is not the way we're doing it. It's a different way. And I would just say, go to my YouTube channel and check out some of the videos. I talk a lot about what I would consider best practice. And there's a lot to that. Brady on LinkedIn follows up with bingo, get rid of vendor lock. Thanks for commenting on that. You could also sync to a hosted server too, separate from Oracle, SAP, etc. Absolutely true. You can get your own hyperscaler. You can do what you want. It's your technology. But the minute you move to the cloud and you sign that RISE contract, or you sign that contract to move everything to the cloud, you are giving up a certain amount of control and flexibility. Vendors love it. Again, it's perfect for vendors. It's a great business model. If I were a vendor, I would be doing it too. So I'm not knocking them. We all have a business to run. We all have profit to make. Great. But if I'm a leader in an organization, I'm going to see it for what it is and say, well, hold on. If it makes sense for me, sure, I'll do that. I will conform to that model. But there's so many cases where it just doesn't make sense for a customer and they think they have no options. But you do. It's your company. Don't let me or a vendor or anyone else tell you how you need to run your business. You wouldn't let you're not going to let a general contractor come in and tell you how you need to build your factory. There's only one way to do it. And by the way, it's going to cost you way more than you expect. It's probably going to fail, but go ahead and give me $100 million to build this new factory. It sounds ridiculous, right? You would never do that. But that's exactly what we're doing over here in the technology space. I don't quite understand why that is. Or you look at like manufacturers when they're going to make a big capital investment in new equipment, or they're going to go acquire another company. The CEOs, the leadership teams, they're heavily involved. They're pushing back. They're making decisions that make sense for them. They're not listening too much to, mainstream one size fits all advice. They're doing what they need to do for their business. But yet when it comes to technology, they just sort of let someone else figure it all out for them. So that mentality more than anything has to change. Great comment here. Sandy's full of great insights here today. You all are, but Sandy's got some particularly interesting ones. Sandy on YouTube says most of the senior consultants started in the 90s or early 2000s, and those consultants are the most resistant to change. Indeed, they are. And they're drinking the Kool-Aid too. They've been trained to drink the Kool-Aid. I know there's a lot of people that hate my content because I'm not drinking the Kool-Aid and I'm not telling them what SAP has trained them to believe or what the big four have trained the consultants to believe. I'm saying something different, and I'm speaking more from the customer perspective. But it's so interesting to hear when I get this hate mail, I'll call it. I get people that say, I totally disagree with you. Why do you hate SAP so much? Why do you hate consultants so much? I'm a consultant. I grew up in the SAP world. I do not hate SAP or consultants,
but there are things they do that I do not like that I think customers need to be aware of. And to look at things from the customer perspective instead of SAP or consultant perspective, there's times where people push back and look at me like I'm crazy. Like, why are you looking at that from the customer perspective? This is what SAP says. This is what my big four consultancy says I should do. And I say, I don't care what SAP or the big four or any other ERP vendor say. What I care about is what the customers need and want and what's going to be best for them. So anyway, it's a bizarre industry. I'll write a book about just the industry someday and how broken it is. I covered a little bit in Welcome to the Machine, but I have a lot more to say about that. Okay. So, here's Sandy says, go get the book. Thank you. Yes, read the book, Sandy. Tell all your consultants that are resistant to change, have them read the book. Because I think even if you're a consultant, it is helpful to know like what your role is. And I've been part of the machine. I am part of the machine in many ways. So I get it. Like I'm not, the thing about the book is it's not placing blame on vendors, consultants, or end customers. It's showing how they all have their own self-interest and their own priorities that are in total conflict. And that's understandable. I mean, if you unpack it, you read the book, it makes sense. And it's not a personal thing. I don't look at this and say, oh, I can't believe Christian Klein from SAP, he's the problem. He is not the problem. SAP is not the problem. The ERP world is not the problem. The problem is the way these three worlds collide. It's very dysfunctional and it's a perpetual cycle that just delivers a bunch of wasted money and failure to customers. And once you understand that, it's a lot easier to overcome. So anyway, we're way over time. This is a fun conversation. I was worried I wouldn't have much to talk about today since I didn't have a guest like I usually do, but turns out I was wrong. You guys had a lot of great comment and discussion. So it's almost like I had 20 or 30 guests on the podcast. So thank you for that. Thanks for everyone for bringing up great questions. Eros Sizek engineer on TikTok says sometimes it's not resistance to change. It's fear of losing control. Absolutely. Consultants and vendors want control. We all want control in some way, so I don't blame them. Gabriel, I know you have a bunch of questions about implementation plans and approaches. You feel free to DM me. I'm happy to help you out with that. I won't get into that here just in the interest of time. User 1948 on TikTok says, LOL, I've been supply chain for 10 years. SAP is the best for big enterprise supply chain operations. Many would agree with you. I think it's one of the best for sure. Yep, Gabriel has a lot of questions here. Feel free to reach out. How can I get an Epicor demo account? Reach out to Epicor and they can probably get that for you, or DM me. I can put you in touch with people that can help with that. Network Effect on TikTok says, I want Workday on-prem, but they won't do that for me. We have Atlassian products on-prem only. That's tough with Workday because they are a SaaS or cloud-based solution. So getting it on-prem would be very difficult, if not impossible. If you really want something on-prem, I would look for a different system. Workday's great, but if you want an on-prem HCM or financial system, I would go a different direction than Workday because it's just not built for on-prem. Don says, hybrid is great. Some things need to be owned by the company. Totally agree. So thanks to everyone on TikTok as well. So that's what I've got for you. Thanks for your time today. Appreciate you joining. Be sure to check out new episodes every Wednesday, transformationgroundcontrol.com. Check out my new book, Welcome to the Machine. You can find it on Amazon, anywhere in the world, multiple formats. And don't forget to register for Digital Stratosphere in Denver, Colorado. You can join in person, meet me in person, or meet me and join me virtually anywhere in the world. September 9th through 11th. It's going to be a great event. Go to Stratosphere 2026 to see the agenda, the speaker lineup, learn more about it. You can register there, stratosphere2026.com. So have a great week. We'll see you next week on the next episode of Transformation Ground Control. Take care.